So we're doing AP Micro live exam number 2. The first question is going to be dealing with monopoly, and these questions today were actually pretty easy. The number 1 and number 2 didn't require you to do a ton of graphing, but they were more like kind of like definition style questions. Whereas the first micro, we had game theory and then we had perfect competition and stuff like that. So this is just going to be interpreting a regular monopoly graph. Okay, so here we go. There is one art museum on the island of Wastonia. The museum's demand and cost curves are shown in the graph above. The museum currently relies on admission charge for some of its funding. Its directors are debating about how to set the admissions charge. Okay, using the labeling of the graph above, identify the price and quantity associated with the following objectives. All right, so number 1, rather. The museum maximizes its profit. Remember, we're dealing with a firm here, and so we maximize the profit maximization point for firms is where the marginal revenue is equal to the marginal cost. So on our graph, we have to see where MR intersects with MC. At this point, it's going to intersect at Q2. Okay. Now, remember, it's asking for the price and quantity. Because it's a monopoly, we are not going to charge the price, okay, where MR equals MC. Because we have no competition, we can now walk that up to the demand curve. So the answer for A1 is going to be P5 and Q2. So we're going to produce at Q2, but we're going to charge all the way up at P5. Okay? All right. Number 2, the museum maximizes its total revenue. Okay, this is making sure that you guys understand how to read the graph, and this is a marginal revenue question. So if we look at our graph, we see where marginal revenue goes negative, right? So marginal revenue hits 0 at Q4. Okay, at Q4, we know that now any item produced outside or after Q4, the additional revenue we are going to generate will be negative, which means our total revenue will begin to fall. Okay, so when when marginal revenue is equal to 0 is where we maximize our total revenue. So the answer for this question would be P3 and Q4. All right. 3, the museum maximizes the sum of consumer and producer surplus. Okay, so in this question, we want to make sure that we are producing the allocatively efficient quantity. Guys, it's the same thing as socially optimal. Remember, right? Socially optimal and allocative efficiency are pretty much the same thing. It means that price is equal to the marginal cost. All right? So in this case, allocative efficient quantity is P4 and Q3, right? It's where MC intersects with demand. And that would give us our perfectly competitive output and price, or socially optimal. All 3 mean the same. Number 4, museum maximizes its attendance as long as it breaks even. Okay, so if we know we're breaking even in economics, that means a normal economic profit. Normal economic profit is where our total costs and our total revenue are equal to 0. So in this case, we want to find where our average total cost curve is equal to price. Okay, and at that point, we would have a normal profit. So that is going to be P2 and Q5. Any questions? All right. Just making sure, because I can't remember now what answer I gave you guys for number 3. I'm just making sure that I said P4 and Q3 for number 3. So if you go back. For A, numbers 1 through 4 is equal to 1 point each. Okay, so A1, A2, A3, A4. So A in total is worth 4 points. You get 1 point for correctly answering each one of the letters, 1 through 4. Okay. B, when the attendance is at Q1, is the demand price elastic, inelastic, or uninelastic? And explain. So in class, we've learned about how to tell elasticity 2 different ways. We learned it in terms of looking at a uninelastic curve. We know that we move away from the midpoint, we get more elastic and more inelastic. Okay, but in this one, it's easier for us because we have marginal revenue. So we know that as so long as marginal revenue is positive, okay, we are going to be in the elastic portion of the curve. Okay, once marginal revenue gets negative, we're at the inelastic portion of the curve, right? So let's look at it. At Q1, our marginal revenue is positive, therefore this is the elastic portion of the demand curve. Okay, B is worth 2 points. So the 1 point for saying it's elastic, and then 1 point for saying that marginal revenue is positive. All right. C, assume that the price is set at P2. Assuming the existence of an opportunity cost, indicate whether the museum's accounting profits would be positive, negative, or zero, and explain why. Okay, this is a tricky question. They're trying to trip you up, right? Obviously, immediately, most of us are like, oh, okay, we look at it at P2. Well, P2 is where price is equal to average total cost. Therefore, total revenue is equal to total cost. So our accounting profit is going to be zero. And that's not true. Look at the way that the question is worded. Okay, assume that the price is set at P2. Now, assuming the existence of an opportunity cost, indicate whether the museum's accounting profit will be positive, negative, or zero. Remember, to find economic profit is equal to accounting profit, okay, minus the opportunity cost. In this case, if we know an opportunity cost exists and we know our economic profit is zero, it means that our accounting profit must be positive, okay? Has to be. Because when we subtract the opportunity cost from our accounting profit, now we're having economic profit of zero, right? So C is worth 2 points, 1 point for saying positive, and another point for saying that economic profit is equal to accounting profit minus opportunity cost, all right? Or saying that taking away the opportunity cost from accounting profit means that accounting profit has to be positive, all right? And any way you want to explain, you can explain the same thing. Okay, let's look at D. Assume that the government decides the museum should charge no admission and agrees to subsidize the museum for any losses. Remember, a subsidy means that the government is pretty much going to cover your losses, make sure you stay open. These are things that we like to do with positive externalities. Also, a reminder, no externalities, okay, on this for micro. They cut that entire unit out. So you guys lost foreign exchange and externalities from this exam, which isn't a bad thing. So assume the government decides that the museum should charge no admission and agrees to subsidize the museum for any losses. If we look at it, okay, I have my my cursor here. It doesn't really help, but we look at it, we're going to be producing a Q7, right? So Q7 is where the price of the good is zero. So at Q7, that is what we're going to produce. So using the labeling on the graph, identifying the museum's attendance under that circumstance, it is going to be Q7, okay? And then the second question is, would the outcome be allocatively efficient and explain? So D1 is worth 1 point, and you get 1 point for saying it's Q7. The next portion is worth 2 points, and the answer is this. Would the outcome be allocatively efficient? The answer is no. And the reason why, or the explanation is that allocative efficiency is where price is equal to marginal cost. At Q7, price is not equal to the marginal cost, okay? So we can just say at this point, all right, that price is not equal to marginal cost, and therefore it's not allocatively efficient. So you get 2 points for that. Okay? I think that is it for that portion of the question. So do you guys have any questions on the monopoly graph? Anything you need me to go back over? Okay, cool. So let's go then to the second question. This one is all about utility maximization. Okay, for those of you who have done this on your own or are doing this while you're watching my video, whatever it might be, I'm going to give you a formula here that you need to remember, and it's going to help you out tremendously with this. Okay, we learned this a little bit differently in class, but this formula is going to kind of give you a little bit of a shortcut, especially for those of you who are awesome at math. So let's look at Sasha is a utility maximizing consumer who spends all of her income on peanuts and bananas, both of which are normal goods. Just a reminder, the definition, normal good is a good that we purchase more of as our income increases, right? So in class, I always like to say, like, you know, riding your bike versus taking an Uber, or mass transportation versus taking an Uber. Uber is more expensive. you're more willing to take an Uber as your income increases versus that of mass transit. All right, so let's check it out. Assume that the last unit of peanuts consumed increases Sasha's total utility from 40 utils to 48 utils, and that the last unit of bananas consumed increases her total utility from 52 utils to 56 utils. Okay. One, if the price of a unit of peanuts is $1 and Sasha is maximizing utility, calculate the price of a unit of bananas. Can I edit this? No. But you know what I can do? Hold on. I'm going to stop sharing for a second. Just give me 1 second. I actually have all of this stuff so I can edit it and draw it out on the video for you guys. All right, sweet. What do you think? Like 130? Is that right? Yeah, not good. Okay, so for this one, I think you guys can all see my screen, right? I think I'm sharing it. Okay, so for this one, we would normally look at things like, right, so we'd have quantity, we'd have total utility, we'd have marginal utility, and then marginal utility per dollar spent, right? Hopefully you guys remember all of this stuff. We do it for each one. So we do quantity, total utility for like peanuts, marginal utility for peanuts, marginal utility, okay, per dollar spent. So we know we have two different quantities here. So the first quantity, and we'll do this. So this is going to be peanuts. And this would be bananas. Closer. All right. So first one would be quantity of peanuts is going to be 1. We know that the first peanut is going to give us 40 utils. Okay, we don't know the marginal utility. We don't know the marginal utility per dollar spent. Okay, so now bananas, we're going to have the first one is going to give us 52 utils. Don't know the marginal utility. Don't know the marginal utility per dollar spent. Okay, second unit is going to, for peanuts, it's going to give us 48 utils, right? Which means that the change, right? So marginal utility is equal to the change in total utility over the change in quantity. It's a 1 unit change, so this is nice and easy for us. Our marginal utility is now going to be 8. You don't know the price, so just leave that blank. Second one is 56 utils. Marginal utility is going to be 4. Okay, again, going from 52 to 56, a change of 4. It's a 1 unit increment, and we don't know the marginal utility per dollar spent. Okay, so we've already set up this chart. This is how we did it in class. Okay, we don't know the prices of stuff. Well, we know that peanuts is $1. Okay, so peanuts are going to be $1. We don't know the price, okay, of bananas. So in order to figure out the marginal utility per dollar spent, we just take the marginal utility and you divide it by the price of the good. In this case, we're going to take 8 divided by 1, which is also 8. Okay, so our marginal utility per dollar spent for the second unit of peanuts is 8. And that's all the information that we currently have. Now, the question is asking us something that's a little bit kind of tricky at first. Question says, if the price of a unit of peanuts is $1 and Sasha is maximizing her utility, calculate the price of a unit of bananas. We know in class that when we created this chart, we would go down and just select back and forth until all of our budget has been spent and we are purchasing goods based on a priority of the highest marginal utility per dollar spent. We don't have all of that information. We don't have the budget. We don't have many different quantities. We only have this. So we know that at this point, the marginal utility per dollar spent for bananas has probably got to be even, okay, with peanuts. Well, there's a much, much easier way to do it than looking at that. Okay, and that's by using this formula, right? So it's going to be the marginal utility of good X. Hold on, I got to underline it, I think. Right. So the marginal utility of good X. It's going to be the marginal utility of good Y. Okay, so it's the marginal utility of good X over the price of good X is equal to the marginal utility of Y over price of good Y. Okay, so in this case, if we actually look at it, all right, and we're going to plug in the numbers, well, what's the marginal utility of good X? Well, we went from 1 to 2. Okay, so it gives us a marginal utility of 8. You would think by now I would understand how to operate a computer. All right, so it's going to give us 8. It's going to be 8 over 1, all right, because the price of good X is 1. Okay, is now going to be, it's going to be equal to, we don't know, the marginal utility of good Y is 4. Okay, and we don't know, all right, obviously the denominator. Well, the only other thing to make this, in order to make this equation true, we know that 4 over 0.5 is going to give us 8, right? So it means that the price of good, or the price of bananas is going to be 50 cents. All right, so E1, calculate the price of a unit of bananas, you get 1 point for stating 50 cents. Now, you could have figured that out using our chart too by just figuring out, well, dividing 4 by what number is going to give me 8 in terms of the marginal utility per dollar spent. But it's just, you can get rid of all of that, making the chart and everything like that. If we know that maximizing utility, the equation for that means that the marginal utility of good X over the price of good X is going to be equal to the marginal utility of good Y over the price of good Y. And that's going to maximize our utility when we're trying to purchase between 2 separate goods. Okay. Hopefully I didn't confuse any of you. Hopefully that was helpful. Okay, E2. If the price of a unit of peanuts increases and the price of a unit of bananas remains unchanged from the price you determined in part A1, how will Sasha's purchase of peanuts change? Okay, this is just a basic like supply and demand kind of question, right? So if the price of peanuts increases, are we going to buy more or buy less of it? And we're going to buy less of it. So we buy less peanuts. Okay. E2 is worth 1 point. So E itself is worth 2 points together. F, assume that the cross price elasticity of demand between peanuts and bananas is positive. A widespread disease has destroyed the banana crop. What will happen to the equilibrium price and quantity of peanuts in the short run, and explain? Okay, cross price elasticity, old formula from the beginning of the year. It just lets us know the relationship between two goods, and we want to know, are they substitutes or are they complements? When we have a positive cross-price elasticity, we know the goods are substitutes. So based on the substitution effect, law of demand, let's see what happens. What happens to the equilibrium price and quantity of peanuts in the short run, right? So if there is a widespread disease that destroys banana crops, the supply of bananas will decrease. If the supply of bananas decreases, the price of bananas will increase. If peanuts are a substitute for bananas and bananas get more expensive, then more people will buy peanuts as compared to bananas. Therefore, the demand for peanuts will increase in the short run. This means that both the equilibrium price and quantity will increase. Okay, I know that was a lot to say without any types of graphs. All right, but that was the answer and the explanation all together. My advice for you guys is this: if you see a question like this and you need to take it step by step, because this is a first step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4, right? Graph it out if you need to, right? Just graph it out. Oh, okay. Negative supply shock to bananas, great. And we've done a ton of those in class, right? One of my favorite things to do was an unexpected frost event, right? Everything. Unexpected frost event killed half the crops that we ever try to show a supply shock in class. So we're kind of used to this. So you draw that out, and then you can then say, all right, well, if we know that peanuts are a substitute, people are going to buy more peanuts. Okay. So F is worth 2 points. One for stating that the price will increase and quantity will increase, and 1 point for explaining that the demand for peanuts is going to shift to the right. Okay, G, assume that the price of bananas increases. Will the substitution effect increase, decrease, or have no effect on the quantity of bananas demanded? Well, again, this is just a law of demand question, right? If the price of bananas increases, people are going to buy less bananas. That's it. So will the substitution effect increase, decrease, or have no effect on the quantity of bananas? It'll have a decrease, okay? So what happens is my income stays the same, price of bananas goes up. I will now substitute something else for the bananas as they get more expensive, okay? G2. What happens to Sasha's real income? This is kind of tricky, but this is trying to make sure that you understand the relationship between incomes and demand. If I'm buying less bananas because they become more expensive, it means that my current level of income has less of a buying power to it. Therefore, my real income will decrease. Now, you don't need the explanation for the point, but I gave you the explanation so you understand, well, how do we get there? And that's because, well, Sasha's income remains stable and remains the same. If all the prices of goods or prices of goods increases while my income stays the same, I can now purchase less goods. Therefore, my real income is going to decrease. All right. G1 was worth 1 point. G2 was worth 2 points. I believe the whole thing is worth 11 points. I'm not sure. We can just tally it up again. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 6, 8, 11. Oh, no, I'm sorry. So A, B, C, and D is 11 points. For the Monopoly graph was 11 points. Utility maximization was 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So utility maximization, this question is worth 6 points. So for the practice exam, question 1 is worth a total of 17 points. Okay. All right. We can move on to question 2 now. Was that better tempo? Am I going too fast today, or is it a little bit better?
No, it's good.
Okay, good. Thinking about you specifically there, Rush.
Appreciate it.
Had some people drop out while we were broadcasting. All right, let's check it out. Okay, here we go. Next question. So it says peaches and nectarines. It's a little bit smaller. There we go. All right, peaches and nectarines are substitute goods, and both are produced. Can I just click off of this? There we go. And both are produced under conditions of competitive long-run equilibrium. Okay. Joyce, a producer in the peach industry, discovers a technological breakthrough that only reduces the cost of producing peaches. Explain how the change in technology will affect each of the following for Joyce. Now, if you are like me at all, and sometimes it's probably the worst habit I have, but I read through things fast and I just make assumptions for how sentences will end. So when I was doing this practice problem before they did the review and let us know the answer key, I was like, oh, this is super easy. I just like ripped through it, did A, B, and C, and then I got to the next part and realized, whoops, I did A, B, and C completely wrong. And the reason was because I missed the following phrase, okay? I said, explain how the change in technology will affect each of the following for Joyce. That's huge, okay? That language right there lets me know, wait a minute, I'm not looking at the market graph. I'm looking at an individual firm graph here, okay, for Joyce. So let's do this. I can actually draw. Oh, no, I can't because my pen isn't working, and I have to go get a battery from school. All right. So, no, I won't do that. Okay. So we know that we have a perfectly competitive firm here that we're looking at, right? So if Joyce produces, I want to see something, because this is kind of counterproductive if I can't draw for you guys. Okay, that worked. Let's see. All right, so we're going to look at Joyce's firm here. Okay, remember, it's perfectly competitive firm, so Joyce is a price taker. We have our marginal cost curve. Yeah, it's terrible. Don't hate. Okay. Then I'll draw our ATC. So we know this is long run equilibrium, right? So our ATC and this is going to be marginal revenue equals demand equals average revenue equals price. QE. All right. So if Joyce has figured out a way to produce peaches at a much cheaper rate, well, what's going to happen? Joyce's ATC and her MC most likely are both going to decrease, right? So if we have a new ATC, even if you just drew a new ATC, that's fine, okay? And a new MC, we would know, I made that intersect at the same place. That's not good. There we go. Okay. We would know that Joyce is going to produce a greater amount of peaches. Well, why? Her costs have gone down. Okay. So if the marginal cost curve drops, I'm now going to produce more. Well, how do I know that? I'm going to produce more. So I'm going to, oh, what did I just do? I drew the whole thing wrong and started talking about it. See, this is why we need to be in class. You guys need to call me out on this stuff. We know that we're going to produce, okay, where MR equals MC. So if our marginal cost curve dropped, okay, the price has stayed the same in the market. The price of peaches in the market hasn't changed because not everybody has access to this technological innovation yet. So if our marginal cost curve drops, our average total cost curve drops, okay, we're going to produce more. We're going to go from QE to Q1. Okay, so that's going to help us answer that question. So let's go back here. Now, Joyce, producer, explained how the change in technology will affect each of the following for Joyce. So A, quantity of peaches produced. We know that we're going to produce more. Okay, so the quantity is going to increase because marginal cost decreases. Okay, one of the things you have to understand here is it says explain. So you're only going to get the full point for each of these if you include the explanation. So marginal cost drops, my supply is going to increase. I'm going to produce more. B, the price of peaches. I am a price taker in the market. Only my firm has been impacted by technological innovation. Therefore, the price in the market stays the same. Why? Because I'm only analyzing Joyce's firm. I'm not analyzing the market. And I'm a price taker. So you could even get away with just saying Joyce is a price taker, and that's it. Okay. C, short run profits. Well, if we go back to the graph, I'm not going to right now because it's drawn up there, but we know that we dropped ATC as well. We're reducing all of our costs. If our ATC decreases now, price stays the same. In the short run, Joyce's profits will increase. The ATC will be below Mr. Darp in this scenario. Okay? All right. Let's move on now to D. Okay, D is saying, okay, now assume that all other peach producing firms adopt the new technology. Explain how the adoption of new technology will affect each of the following in the peach producing industry. Okay, so this is the entire industry now. And this is, all right, so we want to see the entire industry. So this is the one where we're going to keep supply and demand for the whole market is going to impact our graphs. So that's pretty close, I hope. Okay, I'm just going to make a marginal cost curve one color. ATC curve, because remember, firms were in long run. equilibrium here. Quantity, price, price, quantity, demand, supply. All right. So we want to know what is going to happen in the market if everybody gets that new technological advancement. If everybody gets the new advances in technology, then every firm, like Joyce's that we saw on the individual basis last time, is now going to increase their supply. So if every firm increases their supply, then the supply in the entire market will increase. So price will decrease in the market. Now what's going to happen to all firms, right? So this is our firm graph. That's supposed to say firm, not FIM. Okay. In the firm, what's going to happen? We're going to have a new Mr. DARP. And when the new Mr. DARP comes in, well, what happens? Now we're going to have a new quantity produced. We're going to produce where MR equals MC. And so now each firm, believe it or not, is going to produce less on a firm by firm basis. Okay. No, they're not. Oh, we'll see. Let's see what happens here. I don't want to get ahead of myself. All right, let's go back to the question. Now assume that all other peaches producing firms will adopt new technology. Explain how the adoption of the new technology will affect each of the following in the peach producing industry. Okay, so this is just pretty much supply and demand graph. It's asking for question. D, price of peaches. Well, we know that the price of peaches is going to decrease. Well, why? Because we're going to increase the total supply of peaches in the market as our costs go down. All right. So that is worth 1 point, saying the price is going to decrease, okay, because of an increase in supply. So you have to say all of that to get the 1 point. E, quantity of peaches produced. Okay, the quantity of peaches is going to increase as each firm is going to increase their supply. So if we were to go back to this graph, okay, what I was missing from the graphs here to show you in the market is the fact that everybody else's ATC and MCs are going to decrease, right? So we all are going to get the benefit of the new price. So because of that, I know this graph looks kind of crazy right now. So because of that, we're actually not going to you're not going to see a complete decrease, okay? You're not going to see a complete decrease in the number of units produced by each firm, okay? Because now we're going to produce more, where marginal cost is equal to the new Mr. DART. All right, so for those of you who are looking at the graph and you're like, well, you just completely messed that up, that's why, and you can see it right there. So in order for all of this to happen, and that's why I just went to cover it up on my screen like you could see me covering it. That's why you don't need the firm graph for this one. You can only just look at the market graph and it'll be sufficient to get your answer. All right. So E, quantity of peaches produced is going to increase because we have an increase in supply. All right, let's move to the next one. This new technology is not applicable to the production of nectarines. Explain how the changes that occurred in the peach industry will affect each of the following in the nectarine industry. Again, in order to receive the points for this, you must include your explanation. So the price of nectarines. Well, we know that the price of nectarines is going to decrease. Well, why? Well, we know that peaches are going to get cheaper. There's going to be an increase in an influx in supply of peaches. Therefore, if peaches get cheaper and they are substitutes for nectarines, people are going to buy more buy more peaches and buy less nectarines. Therefore, demand for nectarines will decrease. Okay? If demand for nectarines decreases, the price of nectarines will also decrease, and the quantity of nectarines produced in the industry will also decrease. So for this one, Price decreases, quantity decreases. Why? Explanation, there's a decrease in demand for nectarines. All right? All right, last two, and then we're out. Okay, last two is this. So we're now looking at a labor market, okay, for nectarine workers. And I'll make sure to include more resource market questions, okay, in the next kind of micro review that we'll do for next week. All right. The graph above depicts the supply and demand curves for workers in the nectarine industry, nectarine industry before the technological breakthrough in the peach industry. Explain how the technological breakthrough in the peach industry will affect each of the following in the labor market for nectarine workers. These two questions are 100% making sure you understand shifters of wages or supply and demand in labor markets. So let's look at it. We know there is now a decrease in demand for nectarines because peaches are cheaper. If there's a decrease in demand for nectarines, workers or demand for labor is derived from demand for a product, okay? So if demand for the product is going to decrease, demand for the labor to produce that product will also decrease, okay? So in this example here, okay, and I'm just gonna draw right on the market. In this example, our demand, okay, would decrease. If our demand for labor decreases, well, that's our new wage, and this is the new quantity of workers that is demanded. So let's look at it. What happens to the wage rate for nectarine workers? Well, it's going to decrease. Okay, well, why? Because the demand for nectarines is decreased, therefore the demand for labor is decreased. Therefore, our willingness to pay workers is also going to decrease. Okay, therefore, wages decrease, less people are going to be willing to work, less people are hired. All right, and number of nectarine workers hired, it's going to decrease. Why? Because there's a decrease in demand for the product, so we no longer need the labor to produce the output. So demand for the workers will, or the number of workers hired will also decrease. You could say that it's derived demand, or if you want to get very technical with it, you could say that the marginal revenue product, right, which is equal to the marginal product times the wage rate, is going to, the marginal product times the price of the good. You're going to say that as the wage rate of, or as the price of the good decreases, okay, the marginal revenue product will decrease. Therefore, we'd hire less workers because the marginal resource cost at some point is going to be greater than the marginal revenue product as we hire more workers. So we'd hire less workers because our MRP is going to decrease as a result of the price of the good decreasing. Okay, that's it for these questions. If you have any questions, let me know. If you're wondering, so if you do this at home, okay, and you're scoring it and you're tallying it up, right? So I think there is a total of 26 points, okay, in this. So let's look at it. For number 2, A is worth 1 point, B is worth 1 point, C is worth 1 point. Okay, now when we get to D and E, D is worth 1 point, so it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Yeah, so that's 9 points here total, I believe. So we had 9 and 17. So that should be 26 is the total of what it's worth. So if you are in the 22 to 26 range, it's probably about a 5. If you are in 19, maybe even 18 if you're lucky, 18 to 22, 19 to 22 is a 4. And they might even go all the way down to a 15 for a 3. So anywhere from 15 to 18, something like that, it would be a 3. All right. That's all I got for today, guys. If you have any questions, let me know. Post a new schedule next week. Hope you guys have a great weekend.
Hey, Mr. McSweeney, what's going in the grade book in terms of grades?
What's that?
What's going in the grade book in terms of like grades? Is it just the AP macro FRQs?
Yeah, it's just the FRQs, pretty much. I'm no longer going to be asking you guys to complete any more written assignments to turn anything in for grades. You're done.
Okay, thanks.
That's it, man. You finished your requirement for me. You guys worked hard for me all year. Everybody does well at the fourth quarter. That's how it usually works anyway. And all of you get out of the rite of passage of making an econ movie, which I'm kind of upset about. I'm not going to lie. That's it.
Made it.
Yeah.
Have a good one, Miss Fanny.
Yeah, have a great weekend. Have a great weekend, everybody. See you later.